Good morning, friends. Welcome to the Immanuel 10 at 10. As many of you may have heard, Terry Thompson had a heart attack on Sunday while snow blowing. He's at Mercy Hospital in Des Moines, so please be praying for him and his family during this difficult time. This week, we finished the book of Leviticus in our 1 year chronological read through the Bible challenge. Congratulations, you made it through. As the guys from the Bible Project note in their video, Leviticus is a weird book, full of instructions on animal sacrifice and purity laws for keeping kosher that are foreign to us. They point out, however, that in the book, God graciously provides a way for people to live in his presence. God is completely holy, set apart, unique as the source of life and goodness, purity and justice. Israel was unjust and sinful, so they couldn't enter God's presence without being destroyed. So God gave the people three different ways to be reconciled to him: rituals, priests, and purity laws. These things enabled the Israelites to know when they were able to be close to God and when they were not. As we talked about last week, the first 15 chapters of Leviticus deal with ritual sacrifices to say thank you and I'm sorry to God, the ordination of priests, and kosher purity laws that reminded the people of God, how God's holiness affects every part of life. Each of those sections are mirrored in the second half of the book. First, there are moral purity laws, including care for the poor, sexual integrity, and social justice. Then, qualifications for the priests are listed. They were to live out the highest level of moral integrity and ritual holiness because they were to be ambassadors between God and the people. Then the last part of the book describes 7 ritual feasts like Passover and Tabernacles that reminded the Israelites each year of different parts of their story and how God provided for them and went with them all along the way. The people were to respond to God's gracious deliverance and protection and provision by showing the same grace to others and living a holy life. They were to provide for the needs of foreigners living in their land because they were once foreigners as well in Egypt. They were instructed not to glean all the way to the edges of their fields, but to leave some for the poor and needy. What are the edges of our fields today? How can we leave some of the extra of the bounty we've received from God for the needs of others? Who are the foreigners, the needy, and the most at risk people around us that we often don't even notice? God also instructed the Israelites to uphold justice by not speaking falsely, taking bribes, or showing preference to either the rich or the poor. Every seventh year was to be a year of Sabbath for the land. They were not to work the fields, but eat only what the land provided for it by itself. God promised that in the sixth year he would give them a harvest that would be enough for 3 years, so they would never go hungry. One of the festivals they were to celebrate every 50 years was the Year of Jubilee. In that year, all land reverted back to the original owners. Debts were canceled, slaves were set free, and the land was given a year of rest. In the New Testament, we see that Jesus is our Jubilee. He cancels our debt of sin, he sets us free, and he will bring the new creation, the renewal of all things. God wanted the Israelites to live differently than the nations around them, showing more grace and love toward each other and their neighbors. They were to live lives that pointed to God. I wonder if we Christians blend in too much with the society around us today. I'm not saying that we need to become Amish. We don't have to live like it's the 1800s or dress in funny old clothes. But we should live our lives in such a way that it makes people ask questions to which the only answer is Jesus. God calls us to live with integrity. The priests were called to an even higher level of integrity and moral behavior than the rest of the people. They were to show strong and upright character in all they did. I don't think I would have done very well as a Levitical priest. So much of their job involved butchering animals. I've always been a little squeamish about blood. I never liked doing dissection in biology class. When I was a chaplain in a hospital during seminary, I had the chance to watch a laparoscopic surgery, and it was fascinating. But I started getting kind of lightheaded and had to leave the room when more bleeding started happening and they decided to switch to traditional surgery. There's actually an entire section of hymns in our hymnal on the blood of Jesus. There's power in the blood. Are you washed in the blood? There is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Immanuel's veins. And of course, what can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. It all sounds a little grotesque. I mean, how can blood make you clean? If you get blood on your clothes from a nosebleed, you have to wash it out right away because blood stains are really hard to get rid of. Maybe that's part of the point. Leviticus says that the life of an animal is in its blood. You can't survive without blood flowing through your veins. When the people offered sacrifice, the animal died instead of them. Its blood atoned for or covered their sin. It was an exchange of life for life. That's what Jesus did for us. He gave his life for ours. Though he was sinless, he took our sin upon himself. He died so that we don't have to. His blood takes away our sin. His blood makes us clean, pure, set apart, able to stand in God's holy presence. At the center of the book of Leviticus is the ritual called the Day of Atonement. This Sunday in our adult class, we're going to look at a Bible Project video on sacrifice and atonement. You can find it online if you're not able to join us in person. We send it out in our weekly email. Just as the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement covered the sins of the people, Jesus makes us one with God, reconciled to him. At the end of Leviticus, the people were called to faithfulness to God's covenant with them. God made promises of how he would continue to provide for them and protect them if they were faithful. God also promised that if they turned away from him, they would suffer the consequences of their rebellion and idolatry. Their crops would fail, they would be harassed by their enemies and carried into exile. Then the land would finally experience the Sabbath rest that they would not give it. But even when they were in exile, God would not forget them. He would turn their hearts back toward him. He would be faithful to the covenant he made with Abraham and Isaac. He would rescue them and bring them home. God is faithful to us as well, as inheritors of the promises given to Abraham and the people of Israel. We have so much to be grateful for, especially for Jesus, who fulfills all the law on our behalf and brings us into God's presence. Hope to see you this Sunday for worship, for Sunday school and adult education, and our Wednesday night for our Lenten service at 6:30. All of our worship services are online as well, of course. So have a great weekend. See you soon.